Hi, everyone. I wanted to hop on today and talk a little bit about experiences of protective parents who are not seeing their children this holiday season. So, I just had a call with a mom who basically has had really limited contact with her child, but it's been getting better. The child has and she have really been able to reignite the attachment. She took my protective parenting program and she saw some shifts. There's shifts happening because this child has been indoctrinated since 17 months. This abuser started to try to take away time with the protective parent. And so this mom went from having very limited time to almost about 50% of the time. And now the child has made false accusations against the protective parent. So the child is now 10, has made some false accusations, and this mother is, of course, devastated. She hasn't seen her child since before Thanksgiving. And she's saying to me, why is she willing to say these horrible things about me? It's the most heartbreaking thing to have to tell a protective parent that they're taking that experience personally is actually not accurate. This is a child who's living as a prisoner of war. This is a child who really doesn't feel like they have a choice. So abusers like to intimidate and isolate. And in that, they're more readily able to indoctrinate it. I'll call that the three I's: intimidate, and it can be overt intimidation. You do that, I'll do this. It can be that the child has witnessed the protective parent being treated a certain way. She does that, I'm going to retaliate against her. So children are watching, right? They're experiencing in their bodies, literally, what's been going on in this family system, whether they're living with the abuser and the protective parent together or separately. It doesn't matter. They can feel what happens. They know what's occurred. And so in that intimidation doesn't have to be overt. It can be very covert. It can be much more like, you don't really want to see your mom, do you? And what is a child who's afraid of that person going to say? No, I don't want to see them. Your mom was abusive to you, right? No, Dad, she wasn't. I'll just say, Dad, no, she wasn't. Yes, she was. She was, wasn't she? Doesn't she yell a lot? Doesn't she? Doesn't she try to corner you? Doesn't she take away your phone? Right? So think about all of the ways. Now, this child is in a den with a wolf. Really? And this child begins to back up and realize the only way they can be safe is if they appease, it's often acquiesce to the abuser, and or eventually align. In this case, I believe what's happened in this particular case, and I see this all the time. I see children who are literally physically assaulted by an abuser and then eventually align with the abuser. It's like this is indoctrination, it's brainwashing, it is extremely harmful to the developing brain. And then what happens is a tug of war starts happening, and the protective parent is pulling back, and all that does, the child has to fight harder. The child has to say worse things. You see, this is what happens. Protective parents say to me all the time, but you're telling me to give in. I'm not telling you to give in. I'm telling you, your child needs to know you get it, that you're on their team, that you're not going to push and pull because you know their abuse is only going to get worse the more that you push and pull. You can't. You can't. So what does that mean? I mean, for this particular mom, so her child is scheduled to testify, apparently with the judge in private, but to say that her mother is abusive. And she's like, what can my attorney do? And I said, your attorney should make it clear that even if the child does testify against you, that none of the things the child has said are true, but that the attorney will not be cross-examining in any way in front of a judge or otherwise, will not be cross-examining this child, because that lets the child breathe. They don't have to lie to someone else. And so you see what these abusers are doing, right, is they're making our children, they are coercing and controlling our children. They are like prisoners of war. And if they do not align in some way, whether they actually believe it Sometimes they just acquiesce. They don't really believe it, but they acquiesce. They got to do it. Whether they do that or they actually align and they truly begin to believe it because that feels safest. That's what they end up doing. Knowing that our children have to align, that this is part of what they're required to do. This particular mom said, why would she lie about me? I mean, that's not true. And I said, because she has to go home with the abuser. She has to go home with that abuser. She knows what that abuser is capable of. Is it a physical violence that's going to happen to this child? I mean, hopefully not. I don't think so in this particular case. But what it is an understanding that there's going to be retaliation. And so it's just easier. This mom is so heartbroken, which makes perfect sense. And of course, is thinking about all the wonderful experiences they've had and can't believe that her child would be willing to say these things. But again, the developing brain, these children are not their chronological age. This child is just trying to remain safe. But I would add another layer there. And the reality is that this child also knows that the abuse is going to get worse. So this child unknowingly was going home and probably the abuser was asking, did you have a nice time with mom? And this child was being honest, probably saying, yeah, no, we had a lot of fun. We went to see Wicked and, we went out to dinner with, mommy's friends. And this abuser now, what's going on? In this case, his shame is getting ignited. He can't handle the fact that this child adores her mother. And now he's going to do whatever it takes to fracture that attachment. Now he's going to come in guns a-blazing, sadly. He's going to come in a much more aggressive way. And he was probably not willing to do that before. He's done it before, but not willing, like he wasn't ready to do this until he realized, oh my gosh, they're getting closer. Oh my gosh, their attachment is strong. I need to eradicate that. I need to do whatever I can to get rid of that because this makes me feel very shameful. How is it that my child could have any attachment to that person? How is it? Because abusers, again, cannot have attachment in that way. They just can't. And so recognizing that this child is caught, is trapped, it's an entrapment, that they're prisoners of war, that they're in the den with the wolf, and they're going to do whatever they can to be safe. It's going to sometimes mean lying about abuse with the protective parent that has never, ever occurred. So I know that was a lot. It can be triggering. It can be overwhelming. But what we have to recognize, and the best way to navigate this, is to vehemently deny it. This is not true. This never occurred. If you're going to court, you're going to take out a couple of pictures of you and your child together with other people. You might have a letter or two from people who have witnessed your interaction, and you're going to agree possibly to supervise visits in this particular case. People are going to be mad at me for saying that. The most important thing for this child is to have some time with her protective parent. You understand? Think about the shame of this child. Not only are they lying and saying they're being abused by the protective parent, which is not true. Of course, they're living in fear of this abuser. But then if they don't see that protective parent, it's such an abandonment. It's such a loss. Any way that we can see our children, offer supervision to the judge. That was my recommendation today. Put it right out there right away. This mom is being accused of horrific things. Just put it right out there. No problem. Let's do supervised visits. In this way, the child will see that protective parent, will know that they didn't ruin that relationship and the shame that goes with ruining that relationship based on a lie. So I'm really grateful that you're here. I know some of these conversations are really hard. I appreciate this audience, and I hope that you will like and share. Thank you.